Hello again. I'm sorry there's some technical issues a little bit ago. I think everything's worked out. So I'll do a quick reflection again since the audio is missing from that. On Tuesday we began with the story of Daniel. I rewound a little bit earlier to begin at the beginning of chapter 6. The whole book begins with the beginning of the exile. God's people are brought into Babylonia, where they are taken away from everything they have known. So they begin to ask themselves, how do we as God's people define who we are when everything which has defined us has been stripped away, like the temple, their home in Jerusalem, the very land which was the promised land. It's all where their faith was rooted, but has been destroyed. So they begin to look to their traditions. This is when we believe the first 5 books of the Hebrew Testament, the Pentateuch, were finalized. These laws, these traditions, the way of keeping Sabbath, the ways of keeping kosher, those are the things which begin to define God's people. These are the very things which are challenged by the empire. Daniel is maybe the prototype of the one who resists. One who resists the compromises that the empire asked of him. He shows us what it means to live with integrity. As he continues to do that, he rises up in the ranks of King Darius. He becomes a leader amongst the leaders. The text says that Darius has plans to set him above all of the kingdom. The other leaders who have the privilege of ruling, they, instead of deferring to Daniel's leadership, his righteous leadership, they scheme to have him executed by writing this law which they know will directly affect David, and having the king put it into effect. Daniel, did I say David? I meant Daniel. Daniel is faithful. He continues to live up to what God asks him to do. He prays, and he is caught doing that very thing. And finding no way out, King Darius has to have him sent to the lion's den. But God protects him, and he comes out alive. And King Darius makes an example of those who tried to trick him, and declares that the God of Daniel is the supreme God of all. Now we ask ourselves maybe how this story belongs and fits in Advent. But I think we find that in where Daniel and God's people are emotionally and spiritually. Advent is about longing for something which is not yet here. The idea of Advent really is born out of this time of exile, when the people long for return to their home. We long for the birth of Jesus to bring in God's kingdom. We may not be the righteous ones always, like Daniel. We may make compromises to the empire. But there is hope in our resistance. There is hope that the realities of this moment do not shape the future. We have the choice to stand firm against the empire so that God's kingdom might be made real. We can resist that which is hostile to the ways of the kingdom as a way to create hope. This waiting, this longing of Advent isn't passive. It is very active. There is much required of us. And the first is creating that hope, represented by this candle. This hope, which we create in ourselves and for others, prepares the way for the long-expected one.
Come, thou long-expected Jesus, born to set thy people free from our fears and sins. Release us, let us find our rest in thee. Israel's strength and consolation, hope of all the earth thou art, desire of every nation, joy of every longing heart. Oh, 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 oh. Born thy people to deliver, born a child and yet a king, born to reign in us forever. Now thy gracious kingdom bring, by thine own eternal Spirit rule in all our hearts alone, by thine all-sufficient merit raise us to thy glorious throne. Oh, 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 oh,
Let's try that again. May you go from this time creating the hope of Advent by resisting the ways of the empire. I invite you to join us for Sacred Place Together on Sunday morning at 10:30, our time of fellowship and a time of celebrating Advent together. It happens on Zoom at 10:30. All those details are on our website at yoursacredplace.org, including info about our Sacred Kids Time at 9 a.m. on Sundays. May you have a blessed weekend. This is your sacred place.